Hi, this is Rachel Israel with STEM News and Global World Report. We have breaking news that will have a huge impact on the global scene in the very near future. Let's take a look at what's going on around the world.
Los Angeles erupted this week after ICE conducted targeted raids in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods like Paramount and Compton. Over 40 people, including a respected labor union president, were detained, sparking outrage and fear throughout the community. The raids tore families apart and disrupted businesses, transforming an immigration issue into a broader fight for labor rights and community stability. Local organizations scrambled to provide legal aid as heartbreaking stories emerged. Children returning home to missing parents, spouses left in limbo. The high-profile arrest of the labor leader galvanized not just immigrants, but a coalition of residents determined to resist what they saw as federal overreach. Shock quickly turned to defiance as the community resolved to protest and defend their rights. The stage was set for a major confrontation, with the city's future hanging in the balance. In the aftermath, peaceful protests filled LA's streets, vigils, marches, and calls for compassion. But as crowds swelled, tensions with law enforcement escalated, especially outside the downtown Federal Detention Center. What began as chanting soon devolved into chaos, shoving, objects thrown, and a car set ablaze. Riot police responded with tear gas and rubber bullets, arresting over a dozen protesters. The city was left shaken, the line between protest and riot blurred. Protesters accused police of excessive force, while law enforcement insisted their response was necessary to restore order. The violence deepened divisions, with each side blaming the other for the turmoil. Los Angeles became a symbol of the nation's struggle over protest, policing, and civil rights. As images of the unrest spread, President Trump deployed 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles, framing the move as a crackdown on lawlessness. He labeled protesters as radical instigators, vowing zero tolerance. Governor Newsom condemned the deployment as an unnecessary escalation and a dangerous overreach of federal power. The sight of military vehicles on city streets alarmed many, raising questions about the military's role in domestic affairs. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth even suggested active-duty Marines could be mobilized if violence continued, intensifying civil liberties concerns. The standoff between Trump and Newsom exposed a deep rift over who controls public safety and protest response. Two competing narratives emerged, one of restoring order, the other of suppressing legitimate dissent. The National Guard's presence set a new precedent, pitting federal authority against state leadership. The nation watched as the conflict in LA became a test of power and principle. Amid the chaos, President Trump proposed a nationwide ban on masks at protests, arguing that anonymity fuels violence. Civil liberties advocates pushed back, saying masks protect against surveillance and tear gas, and banning them would chill free speech. The debate highlighted a core question: where is the line between public safety and the right to dissent? Critics accused the administration of hypocrisy, pointing to the contrasting responses to the January 6th Capitol riot and the LA protests. Many felt the government's stance depended on the protesters' politics, eroding trust in equal justice. The mask ban proposal became a flashpoint in the larger battle over protest rights and government power. For LA protesters, it was about more than masks. It was about the freedom to speak out without fear. The nation grappled with whether protest rules were being applied fairly to all. The LA protests, sparked by ICE raids, now resonate nationwide, raising alarms about militarization and civil liberties. The deployment of troops to manage civilian unrest unsettled many, evoking fears of martial law. The debate over protest rights, surveillance, and government force affects every American, not just immigrants. The proposed mask ban and the federal-state standoff highlight a country divided over how dissent is handled. Some warn these tensions could push the nation toward a constitutional crisis. The chaos in LA is a reminder that immigration, polarization, and civil rights are deeply intertwined. The real question: will America resolve its differences through democracy and protected dissent, or through force? The answer will shape the nation's future.
Hey, it's Phil. So buckle up because there's been a wild legal showdown between California and Donald Trump. Yeah, that Donald Trump. Here's what went down. A federal judge just ordered Trump to give back control of the California National Guard to Governor Gavin Newsom. Why? Because Trump tried to deploy thousands of Guard members, and even Marines, to Los Angeles, supposedly to crack down on protests and ramp up immigration raids. Newsom and the California Attorney General called it flat-out unlawful. They sued and the judge agreed, saying Trump's move stomped all over the 10th Amendment. That's the part of the Constitution that keeps states' powers safe from federal overreach. But get this, Newsom says he found out Trump was taking over the Guard from a tweet. Imagine waking up and realizing your state's troops have basically been commandeered on Twitter. The Guard had been busy with border security, fighting the fentanyl crisis, and even wildfire prevention, until they got swept up in this political tug-of-war. And Newsom didn't hold back. He called Trump's actions a vulgar display of weakness, comparing it to tactics used by dictators. Now, while there was a lot of tough talk about Marines hitting LA streets, Newsom says that hasn't actually happened, at least not yet. The judge is still demanding proof before making any final calls on that front. Newsom also shared heartbreaking stories from families torn apart by recent immigration raids, kids left alone, parents just gone. He's fired up, calling the raids an abomination. Bottom line, this is a huge win for state rights, and Newsom's confident the ruling will hold up, even if it goes to the Supreme Court. For now, he's urging folks to protest peacefully and reminding everyone free speech is a constitutional right. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments, because this story is far from over. Stay tuned.
To join a press conference not dissimilar to this and express himself by simply asking a question, and was handcuffed, was thrown down to the ground in the United States Center. And anyone that knows Alex Padilla knows one thing about Alex Padilla. He's one of the most mild-mannered, decent people you'll meet. And that's not, don't just take my word for it. Folks on the other side of the aisle would acknowledge that. I thought it was a disgrace. I want to make this clear. The National Guard will come back under my authority by noon tomorrow. The National Guard will be redeployed to what they were doing before Donald Trump commandeered them. The National Guard will go back to border security, working on counter-drug enforcement and fentanyl enforcement, which they were taken off by Donald Trump. The National Guard will go back to working on what we refer to as the rattlesnake teams, doing vegetation and forest management, which Donald Trump took them off in preparation for wildfire season. The National Guard, men and women, will go back to their day jobs, which include law enforcement, that he took them off the job. Just want you to all absorb what I just said. By the way, you don't have to absorb it. You'll have an opportunity to review that in the 36-page order from Justice Breyer that laid that out. And they'll come back under the rightful command of the governor of the state of California.
Governor, what's your message to the protesters who plan to demonstrate on Saturday in response to this military event?
Do it peacefully. It's a vulgar display. It's the kind of thing you see Kim Jong-un, you see it Putin, you see it with dictators around the world that are weak and just want to demonstrate strength. Weakness masquerading as strength. To fet the dear leader on his birthday, what an embarrassment. Honestly, that's about as small as it gets. How weak do you have to be to commandeer the military to fet you on your birthday in a vulgar display of weakness? That's Donald Trump.
Governor, you warned other states in your address the other night. What are the messages and conversations you've been having with those blue state leaders?
Well, these governors have all been waiting for this decision. I haven't had a chance to talk to any governors. And by the way, every Republican governor. I remember one of them by the name of Kristi Noem, who just a few months ago was on there with one of the spokespeople for the Trump administration, Sean Hannity, and was going on and on and on about a rumor that somehow former President Biden was going to federalize her national troop. And she stood there talking about freedom and federalism, the 10th Amendment. And here she is, her folks throwing the United States Senator from the great state of California on the ground and handcuffing him in his office building in 2025.
Governor, what about the Marines? Were you disappointed the judge prior to address that issue? Is that something that you expected to develop?
Well, there's been a lot of rhetoric from Pete Hegseth, that's his name, that they've quote unquote been deployed, but it doesn't appear they have been. But they were making you believe that. And so I think the judge was waiting for the evidence that they actually have been deployed into Los Angeles, which they appear not to be. Of course, they're not coordinating with anybody on this. So he's just waiting for that evidence. Obviously, they moved to another location for training exercises. But there's the bottom line. The police do policing.
Join me as I dive into the chaos of LA streets to see if the National Guard is really deployed and what that means for the city. Los Angeles is facing a surge in unrest, with rising crime rates and public safety concerns pushing the city to the edge. The potential deployment of the National Guard has been a topic of heated debate, with many wondering if it's the right move to restore order. The situation is complex, with various factors contributing to the city's instability. One major issue is the rising crime rate, with violent and property crimes on the increase. This has led to a sense of unease among residents, who are demanding more action from law enforcement. Civil unrest has also become a recurring problem, with protests and demonstrations often turning violent. The city's infrastructure is struggling to cope with the pressure, and the authorities are under scrutiny to find a solution. Public safety concerns are also a major worry, with many neighborhoods experiencing high levels of gang activity and gun violence. The police department is working hard to address these issues, but resources are stretched thin. Community leaders are calling for more support and resources to tackle the root causes of crime, but so far, the results have been mixed. The city's residents are feeling the strain, with many expressing frustration and fear about their safety. The potential deployment of the National Guard is a worrying development, with some residents concerned about the impact on community relations. Others see it as a necessary measure to restore order and protect their neighborhoods. The National Guard's deployment is not a new concept in Los Angeles. Historically, they've been called in to support local law enforcement during times of crisis, such as during the 1992 Rodney King riots. However, the current situation is different, with many more questions surrounding the implications of such a move. Public reactions have been mixed, with some welcoming the extra support and others expressing concern about militarization of the police. The community is also worried about the potential for escalation, with some fearing that the presence of the National Guard could lead to more aggressive policing. Others are concerned about the message it sends, both locally and nationally. The city officials have assured residents that the deployment will be carefully managed, but trust is in short supply. One major incident that prompted the decision to deploy the National Guard was a recent spike in violent crime, including a string of high-profile robberies and shootings. A key statement from officials regarding the deployment emphasized the need for a swift and decisive response to restore public safety. The authorities are under pressure to deliver results, and the eyes of the nation are on Los Angeles. The city's authorities have a tough task ahead of them, balancing the need for public safety with the risk of escalating tensions. A major challenge will be to ensure that the National Guard's presence is seen as a positive development, rather than a provocation. The next few weeks will be critical in determining the success of this strategy. In summary, the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles is a complex issue with far-reaching implications. The city's residents are on edge, and the situation is being closely watched both locally and nationally. The impact of this move will be significant, and it's crucial that the authorities get it right. If you have any thoughts on the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. Check out my other videos for more in-depth analysis on related topics, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.
Well, that's the news for tonight. Thank you so much for continually supporting our content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they would find it interesting as well. We're very excited to continue this journey with you. We thank you all for bringing certain stories to our attention, and for continually keeping us updated with certain events around the world.